Jake had always been the type of guy who minded his own business. At 32, he worked from his small apartment in downtown Portland, fixing computer problems for companies he'd never met face to face. His life was simple and quiet, just the way he liked it. Wake up, work, grab some coffee, sleep, repeat. That Tuesday night started like any other. He was deep into debugging code when he realized he'd finished his last cup of coffee hours ago. The local cafe down the street stayed open until midnight, and Jake needed his caffeine fix to make it through the rest of his project. He threw on his jacket and headed out into the cool October air. The streets were mostly empty, except for a few late-night workers heading home. Jake liked these quiet moments in the city when everything felt peaceful. Walking back with his fresh cup of coffee, Jake took a shortcut through the narrow alley behind his apartment building. That's when he saw her. A woman was slumped against the brick wall, barely conscious. Her clothes looked strange in the dim streetlight, almost like they were shimmering or changing colors. But Jake figured it was just his tired eyes playing tricks on him. What really caught his attention was how pale she looked, almost glowing in a weird way. "Hey, are you okay?" Jake called out, approaching carefully. The woman looked up at him with the most unusual eyes he'd ever seen. They seemed to have tiny flecks of light in them, like looking at stars. She said something in a language that sounded like music, all flowing sounds that Jake couldn't understand. Then she switched to English, though her accent was unlike anything he'd heard before. "Please, I need help." Jake knelt down beside her. Up close, he could see she wasn't just pale, she was actually giving off a very faint glow. Her skin looked healthy, but there was definitely something unusual about the way light seemed to come from within her. "Are you hurt? Do you need me to call an ambulance?" Jake asked. The woman shook her head quickly, almost panicked. "No, please. No hospitals, no doctors. They won't understand." She looked at him for a long moment, as if deciding whether she could trust him. Finally, she said quietly, "I'm not from here." "You mean like not from Portland?" "That's okay. Lots of people move here from other places." "No," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm not from this world." Jake stared at her, waiting for her to laugh or say she was kidding. But her expression remained serious, almost frightened. "Look, I know how crazy this sounds," she continued, "but my name is Lyra, and I came here from a planet very far away. My people, we had to run from our home because bad people took over. Our government. I got separated from the others who escaped with me, and now I don't know where to go." Any reasonable person would have walked away at this point, called the police maybe, or at least assumed she was having some kind of mental health crisis. But something about the way she spoke, the genuine fear in her voice, and yes, the impossible way her skin seemed to glow softly in the darkness, made Jake believe her. Maybe it was because he'd always been fascinated by science fiction, or maybe it was because he'd always felt a little like an outsider himself. Whatever the reason, Jake found himself saying, "Okay, let's say I believe you. What do you need?" Relief flooded her face, and the glow around her became slightly brighter. "Just a safe place to stay while I figure out what to do next. I know. It's a lot to ask from a stranger, but I have nowhere else to go." Jake looked at this strange glowing woman sitting in a dirty alley, claiming to be from another planet. Every logical part of his brain told him to walk away. But the part of him that had always wondered if there was more to the universe than what he could see on his computer screen made a decision that would change everything. "I have a spare room," he heard himself saying. "It's not much, but it's clean and warm." The transformation in Lyra's expression was immediate. The fear melted away, replaced by something that looked like hope. Her glow became noticeably brighter, and Jake realized this wasn't just some trick of the light. This was real. "You would do that for me, even though you don't know me?" Jake shrugged, surprising himself with his own calm. "My mom always taught me to help people in need. I guess that includes people from other planets too." Getting Lyra up to his apartment proved to be an adventure. She moved differently than humans, more fluid and graceful, like she was used to different gravity. The elevator. She stared at the buttons with fascination, gently touching the glowing numbers. "We don't have these where I come from," she explained. We mostly travel by foot or by flying creatures. Flying creatures. Think of them like your horses, but with wings and much friendlier personalities. Once inside his apartment, Jake watched as Lyra examined everything with curious wonder. She ran her fingers along the light switches, amazed that humans needed external sources of illumination. She studied his television, his microwave, even his coffee maker with the intensity of a scientist. "Ah, your technology is so different from ours," she said, picking up his smartphone. "We focus more on living in harmony with nature, while you seem to have mastered manipulating your environment." Jake made some tea, figuring it might be more universal than coffee. As they sat on his couch, Lyra began to tell him more about her world. "My planet has 2 suns," she explained. "The days are longer, and the light changes colors throughout what you would call a day. My people, we've learned to absorb and store this light in our bodies. That's why I glow. And this government you mentioned." Lyra's glow dimmed significantly. It came to power promising order and efficiency, but they decided that creativity and individual expression were wasteful. Artists, musicians, anyone who thought differently was labeled as troublesome. My family, we ran a school that taught children to express themselves through light patterns. They shut us down and marked us as enemies. Jake felt anger rise in his chest. He'd never experienced political persecution, but he understood what it felt like to be different, to not fit in. "How did you get here? We have technology that can fold space, but it's very dangerous and uses enormous amounts of energy. But several families pooled their resources to send their children to safety. I was supposed to meet the others at specific coordinates, but something went wrong with my navigation, and I ended up in your alley instead." They talked until almost dawn. Jake learned that Lyra's people lived much longer than humans, that they could communicate through patterns of light as well as speech, not that their emotions directly affected their luminescence. As the sun began to rise, Lyra's glow became almost invisible in the natural light. "I should let you rest," she said. "You've been more kind to me than I had any right to expect." Jake showed her to his spare room, which he'd been using mostly for storage. "We'll figure out the rest tomorrow, or today, I guess. Get some sleep." As he closed her door, Jake stood in his living room and tried to process what had just happened. 12 hours ago, his biggest concern was finishing a software update. Now he was harboring a refugee from another planet. He looked out his window at the city, waking up below. Somewhere out there, other people were starting their normal Tuesday morning routines. None of them knew that the universe had just gotten a lot bigger and more interesting. Jake smiled to himself as he headed to his own bedroom. For the first time in years, he felt like his life might actually matter for something more than fixing other people's computer problems. He had no idea that this was just the beginning of the most incredible adventure of his life. The next morning, Jake woke up wondering if he'd dreamed the whole thing. Then he heard soft humming coming from the kitchen, a melody that seemed to make the air itself vibrate in a pleasant way. He found Lyra standing by the window, her skin glowing brightly as sunlight streamed across her face. She was holding his coffee maker like it was some kind of puzzle. "Good morning," Jake said, rubbing his eyes. "Having trouble with that?" Lyra turned to him, and her glow seemed to pulse a little brighter when she saw him. "Your food preparation devices are fascinating. This one appears to heat water and pass it through ground plant matter. But I can't understand why you would want to drink something so bitter." Jake laughed and took the coffee maker from her hands. "Coffee is an acquired taste. Most humans need it to function in the morning. Want me to make you some tea instead?" "Actually, I don't need to consume liquids the same way you do. My people absorb moisture from the air." She paused, looking slightly embarrassed. "But I would like to try your foods, just to understand your culture better." That became their new routine. Every morning, Jake would introduce Lyra to something new about human life. She was amazed by simple things like running water, electric, lights, and refrigeration. But what surprised Jake was how much he learned from her, too. "On my world, we don't store food like this," she explained, studying his refrigerator with scientific curiosity. "We have plants that produce fresh food whenever we need it. They're connected to us through a kind of energy link, like telepathically." "Exactly. More like how your body knows when it's hungry. The plants sense our needs and respond. It's a partnership. Jake started working exclusively from home, telling his boss he had a family situation to deal with. It wasn't exactly a lie, he figured. Lyra had become like family to him, even though they had only known each other for a few days. The hardest part was teaching her about human society. Money was a concept that completely baffled her. "So you trade pieces of paper for food?" she asked. Holding a $20 bill up to the light? "Well, it's more digital now, but basically yes. We work to earn money, then use that money to buy things we need. But what if someone can't work? What if they're sick or old?" Jake had to think about that one. It's complicated. "We have systems to help, but they don't always work perfectly." Lyra's glow dimmed. "That sounds lonely. On my world, everyone takes care of everyone else. If you need food, someone feeds you. If you need shelter, someone shares their home." That sounds nice, but it probably works better on a smaller scale. "Perhaps, but I think your way makes people afraid to ask for help when they need it most." Jake realized she had a point. He'd always been fiercely independent, never wanting to burden anyone else with his problems. But here he was, helping Lyra without expecting anything in return, and it felt good. Their biggest challenge came when Jake tried to explain human entertainment. Lyra was fascinated by his music collection, but movies confused her. "Why do you watch other people pretend to live different lives?" she asked as they sat through a comedy film. "It's fun. We get to experience adventures and emotions without any real danger. But you're not actually experiencing anything. You're just watching." Jake paused the movie. "What do you do for fun on your planet?" Lyra's eyes lit up. Literally. Patterns of light began dancing across her skin. "We create stories with our bodies. Watch." She stood up and began to move in a way that was part dance, part light show. Colors flowed across her skin in waves, telling a wordless story that Jake somehow understood. It was about two suns racing across the sky, about plants that sang in harmonious colors, about people who lived in harmony with their world. When she finished, Jake was speechless. "That was incredible. You're like a living work of art." Lyra blushed, her cheeks glowing a soft pink. "It's nothing special. All my people can do this. Can you teach me? Humans don't have the same light organs we do, but maybe I can show you how to express emotions through movement." They spent the afternoon with Lyra, teaching Jake's basic movements that corresponded to different feelings. He felt ridiculous at first, but there was something freeing about expressing himself without words. "You're getting it," Lyra said encouragingly. "Your happiness has a very distinct energy pattern." "How can you tell?" "Your whole body changes when you're truly happy. The way you hold your shoulders, how you breathe, even the rhythm of your heartbeat. We're trained to read these signs." Jake realized that Lyra had been reading his emotions since the moment they met. It should have felt invasive. But instead, it felt like being truly seen for the first time. Their peaceful routine was interrupted. When Jake's sister Katie called to say she was coming for a surprise visit. "She has a key," Jake told Lyra frantically. "She'll be here in an hour." They had practiced this scenario, but Jake's heart was still racing. Lyra went into the spare room and used some kind of meditation technique to dim her natural glow too. Almost nothing. Jake scattered some books and clothes around to make it look like someone had been staying there temporarily. When Katie arrived, Jake introduced Lyra as a friend from college who was staying with him while she looked for an apartment. "Nice to meet you," Katie said, though Jake could see her studying Lyra with curiosity. "You have the most amazing skin. What's your skincare routine?" Lyra looked panicked for a moment. "I drink a lot of water." After Katie left, they both collapsed on the couch, exhausted from the stress of maintaining their cover story. "This isn't sustainable," Jake said. "You can't hide forever." "I know," Lyra replied softly. "But I don't know what else to do. If your government finds out about me, they might want to study me like a laboratory specimen. Or worse, they might try to contact my world and accidentally lead the bad people right to the others who escaped." Jake understood her fear, but he was starting to worry about practical things too. How would she ever be able to work or contribute to society? How would she make friends or build a life? That night, as they sat on his balcony looking at the stars, Lyra pointed to a constellation Jake didn't recognize. My world is near those stars, she said. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever see it again. Do you want to go back? Someday maybe, when it's safe. But I'm starting to think that home isn't just a place. Maybe it's the people who care about you. She looked at him as she said this, and Jake felt something shift in his chest. Over the past few weeks, he'd grown to care about Lyra more than he'd expected. She wasn't just a refugee he was helping anymore. She was becoming something more important, though he wasn't ready to put a name to it yet. We'll figure it out, he said, together. Lyra's glow brightened noticeably, and Jake was beginning to understand that this wasn't something she could control. It seemed to happen whenever she felt strong emotions, especially around him. Jake, she said hesitantly, there's something. I should tell you about my people, about what it means when our light responds to someone else. But before she could explain further, Jake's phone buzzed with a news alert that made them both freeze. The headline read, "Breaking. Scientists detect mysterious signals from deep space. Could this be evidence of alien life?" Jake and Lyra looked at each other, both realizing that their quiet, hidden life together was about to become much more complicated. Jake stared at his phone screen, reading the news headline over and over. Scientists had detected organized signals from space, the kind that couldn't be natural, the kind that suggested intelligent life was trying to communicate with Earth. Lyra went completely still beside him, her glow fading until she looked almost human in the dim light. "Is this about your people?" Jake asked quietly. She nodded slowly. "It has to be. We use quantum communication arrays to stay in touch across long distances. If Earth's scientists are picking up our signals, it means the others who escaped are trying to make contact with your world's leaders." Jake felt a mix of excitement and dread. "That's good news, right? You won't be alone anymore?" But Lyra looked worried, maybe. Or maybe it means the people who forced us to leave have found us and are coming after us. Over the next few days, the news exploded with speculation about alien contact. Every channel had experts debating what the signals meant, whether they were friendly, and how humanity should respond. Jake watched it all with a strange sense of unreality. Here were thousands of people guessing about aliens, while one was sitting right next to him on his couch. "They're all so afraid," Lyra observed, watching a particularly heated debate on the news. "Your people seem to assume that anyone from space must be dangerous. Most of our movies about aliens don't end well for humans," Jake admitted. "So sad. Meeting new people should be exciting, not terrifying." Jake studied her face as she said this. Over the past month, Lyra had become more than just a houseguest. She was the first person he looked for when he woke up, the one he wanted to share good news with, the one whose opinion mattered most to him. But he still didn't understand what her glowing meant, and it was driving him crazy. "Lyra," he said. "Carefully, you promised to tell me about your light patterns, about what it means when they react to people." She turned away from him, her glow dimming again. "It's complicated. Try me. I've gotten pretty good at complicated lately." She was quiet for so long that Jake thought she might not answer. Then she took a deep breath and began to speak. "Among my people, our light is connected to our emotions, yes, but it's more than that. It's connected to our life force, our deepest feelings. When we meet someone who complements us perfectly, someone whose energy matches ours in a way that creates harmony, our light responds automatically." "What kind of harmony?" "It's like..." She struggled to find the right words. "Imagine two musical notes that sound beautiful. Together, when played separately, they're fine. But together, they create something more perfect than either could alone. That's what happens when two of my people are meant to be life partners. Their light sings together." Jake felt his heart skip. "And that's what's happening with you? When you're around me?" Lyra nodded, looking embarrassed. "I can't control it. Every time I look at you, every time you smile or laugh, or even just exist in the same room, my light responds. In my culture, this would mean ... What would it mean? It would mean you're my intended mate, the person I'm supposed to spend my life with." Jake stared at her, processing this information. "But I'm human. That's impossible. That's what I keep telling myself. But my light doesn't seem to care about species differences." Jake stood up and paced across the room, running his hands through his hair. This explained so much, but it also made everything more confusing. What you're saying is that your biology is telling you I'm your perfect match? But your brain knows that's crazy because we're not even the same species. Exactly, and I don't know what to do about it. Jake turned to look at her. How do you feel about me? Not what your light says, but you personally. Lyra's glow brightened despite her obvious attempt to control it. Well, I think you're kind and funny. And more interesting than anyone I've ever met. I love how you see wonder in ordinary things, and how you made room in your life for a complete stranger. I love that you listen to me like what I say actually matters. It does matter. You matter. But, do you feel the same way? Or are you just being kind to someone who needed help? Jake sat back down beside her, close enough that he could feel the warmth from her glowing skin. At first, maybe I was just helping, but somewhere along the way, that changed. I started looking forward to seeing you every morning. Started working faster so we could spend more time together. When Katie visited, I wasn't just worried about keeping your secret. I was worried about losing you. Lyra's light patterns shifted to colors Jake had never seen before, swirling blues and golds that seemed to dance with joy. But I need to know something, Jake continued. Is this real, or is it some kind of alien influence? Are my feelings actually mine? I've wondered the same thing, Lyra admitted. So I contacted someone who might have answers? She pulled out a small device Jake had never seen before, something that looked like crystal and metal combined. This is how I've been monitoring the signals your scientists detected. But I also used it to reach Dr. Chen at your local university. She's a xenobiology expert. You contacted a scientist? Lyra, that's dangerous. I didn't tell her I was an alien. Pretended to be a science fiction writer researching a book about interspecies relationships. She said something interesting. Jake waited. She said that for true cross-species attraction to work, there would have to be incredible biological and psychological compatibility. The chances would be almost impossible. But if it happened, it would suggest that consciousness and emotion might be more universal than we think. So what does that mean for us? Before Lyra could answer, her communication device started flashing. Rapidly. She picked it up, and Jake watched her face go through a series of expressions. Surprise, relief, fear, and finally determination. What is it? Jake asked. It's a message from the other refugees. They've made contact with your government, and first official contact is going to be announced soon. But there's more. Her glow dimmed to almost nothing. The people who took over my world, they're also trying to make contact with Earth. They're demanding that all political refugees be returned to them. Jake felt cold despite the warmth from Lyra's presence. What does that mean? It means I have to decide. I can stay hidden and hope they never find me, or I can come forward and help my people build a relationship with yours. But if I reveal myself, there's a chance I might be forced to go back.
Ow.
And if you go back, I'll probably be imprisoned, or worse, for opposing the regime. Jake reached out and took her hand. Her skin felt warm and seemed to pulse with gentle light where they touched. What do you want to do? I want to help my people. I don't want to lose what we have. Then we'll figure out a way to do both. Looked at him with an expression that was part hope, part fear, even if it means your life will never be normal again. Jake thought about his quiet, predictable life before Lyra arrived. Then he thought about the past month, full of wonder and discovery and feelings he'd never experienced before. I think normal is overrated, he said. That night. As they lay awake talking about the future, Jake realized that whatever happened next, his life had already changed forever. The question now was whether they would face that change together, or apart. Outside their window, the stars seemed brighter than usual, as if the universe itself was watching to see what they would decide. 3 days later, Jake woke up to his phone buzzing nonstop. News alerts, missed calls, text messages from numbers he didn't recognize. He grabbed his phone and saw the headline that changed everything. First contact, confirmed alien species. Makes official contact with the United Nations, he rushed to the living room where Lyra was already watching the news, her face glowing brighter than he'd ever seen it. On the screen, a UN representative stood at a podium next to 3 beings that looked remarkably similar to Lyra, though their light patterns were different colors. My people, Lyra whispered, tears streaming down her face. They made it. News anchor was explaining that the beings called themselves the Luminari, that they came in peace, and that several of them were already on Earth as refugees from political persecution on their homeworld. Jake sat down beside Lyra, watching her reaction carefully. She looked relieved, but also terrified. "This changes everything," she said quietly. "Maybe for the better. You won't have to hide anymore." But Lyra shook her head. "Jake, I have to come forward. My people need every voice they can get to build trust with humans. I can't hide in your apartment while they're trying to create a peaceful relationship between our species." Jake felt his stomach drop. He'd known this moment would come, but he wasn't ready for it. What does that mean for us? I don't know. Within hours, the world transformed. Every news channel, every social media platform, every conversation was about the aliens. Jake scrolled through reactions that ranged from excitement to terror to religious confusion. Some people were calling it the greatest moment in human history. Others were demanding the aliens be sent away immediately. Look at this. Jake showed Lyra a video of protesters outside the UN building. Half of them want to welcome you, and the other half want you gone. Your species is very divided, isn't it? About pretty much everything. Yeah. That afternoon, Lyra made her decision. Despite Jake's concerns, she used her communication device to contact the Luminary representatives at the UN. "I told them I'm here," she said after finishing the call. "They're sending someone to escort me to the integration facility in Washington." "When?" "Tomorrow." Jake felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. "Tomorrow." "That's not enough." "Time." "Time for what?" "To figure out what this means for us. To make plans." 2. He couldn't finish the sentence, but Lyra understood. She moved closer to him on the couch, her light pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. "Jake, I don't want to leave you, but I have responsibilities to my people." "I know. I understand. It's just... just what?" "I'm going to miss you so much it hurts to think about it." Lyra's glow shifted to the deep blue color Jake had learned meant sadness. "I'll miss you too, more than I can express in any language." They spent that last night talking until dawn, sharing stories they hadn't told before, making memories they could hold on to. Jake told Lyra about his childhood, his dreams, his fears. Lyra told him about her family, about the school they ran, about the art her people created with light. "Will you forget about me?" Jake asked as the sun began to rise. "Impossible. My light will remember you even if my mind somehow forgets." The next morning, a sleek vehicle arrived that looked like nothing Jake had ever seen. It moved silently and seemed to hover slightly above the ground. 2 Luminari emerged, their light patterns formal and official dash-looking dot. Jake watched from his window as Lyra said goodbye to the life they'd built together. She looked back at his building once, and even from several floors up he could see her, brightness dim with sadness. For the first time in 2 months, Jake was alone. The silence in his apartment was overwhelming. Everywhere he looked, he saw reminders of Lyra, the corner where she'd practiced her light dances, the kitchen where she'd tried to understand human food, the couch where they'd spent hours talking about their different worlds. Jake tried to go back to his normal routine, but nothing felt normal anymore. His work seemed pointless. His favorite shows seemed boring. Even his beloved coffee tasted flat. But something unexpected happened. The insights Lyra had shared about problem solving and different ways of thinking had changed how Jake approached his programming work. He found himself solving complex issues faster than ever before, approaching problems from angles he'd never considered. His boss noticed immediately. "Jake, whatever you've been doing lately, keep it up. This is the best work you've ever produced." Within 2 weeks, Jake received a promotion and a significant raise. His colleagues started coming to him for advice on difficult projects. For the first time in his career, he felt like his work truly mattered. But success at work didn't fill the empty space. Lyra had left behind. Jake started following every news story about the Luminari integration process. He learned that they were staying at a special facility where scientists and diplomats were working to establish formal relationships between the species. He saw brief glimpses of Lyra in news footage, always in the background, always helping to translate between cultures. She looked good on camera, confident and poised. But Jake noticed that her glow seemed dimmer than it had been when she lived. With him, 3 weeks after she left, Jake's doorbell rang. He opened it to find a reporter from the local news station. "Are you Jake Rodriguez?" the woman asked. "Yes. I'm investigating a story about the first human to provide shelter to a Luminari refugee. Our sources say that was you." Jake's heart raced. "I don't know what you're talking about." The reporter smiled. "One of the Luminari representatives mentioned that their people have a cultural obligation to honor those who show kindness to strangers. They specifically mentioned a human named Jake who took in a refugee named Lyra before first contact was established." Jake realized there was no point in denying it anymore. The secret was out. "Yeah, that was me. Would you be willing to do an interview? People want to know what it was like living with someone from another world." Jake agreed, partly because he hoped Lyra might see it, and partly because he wanted people to understand that aliens weren't something to fear. The interview aired that evening. Jake talked about Lyra's kindness, her curiosity about human culture, and how much she'd taught him about seeing the world differently. He was careful not to mention their personal relationship, but he spoke with obvious affection and respect. "Would you say to people who are afraid of the Luminari?" the reporter asked. "I'd say that kindness and fear can't exist in the same heart," Jake replied. "Lyra showed me that being different doesn't mean being dangerous. It just means having new perspectives to share." That night, Jake's phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize, but when he answered, he heard a familiar voice. "Jake, it's me, Lyra." His heart nearly stopped. "I saw the interview. You were perfect. You said exactly what our people needed to hear." "Are you doing?" There was a pause. "I'm doing important work. But Jake, I need you to know something. Being here, being around my own people again, it's made me realize something about my feelings for you." "What?" "They're not just because of our biological compatibility. They're not just because you helped me when I needed it. They're because of who you are as a person. My light responds to you because my heart does." Jake closed his eyes, feeling relief and longing in equal measure. "I feel the same way. I'm coming back to Portland next week. There's a cultural exchange program being established, and I've been chosen to help coordinate it. If you want to see me, of course I want to. See you, Jake. Things will be different now. Our relationship won't be secret anymore. Are you ready for that?" Jake thought about the reporter, about the attention, about how his quiet life was already changing whether he wanted it to or not. "I'm ready for anything, as long as we're facing it together." When Lyra laughed, Jake could practically see her light brightening through the phone. Jake stood at the airport arrival gate, his heart pounding as he watched passengers emerge from the secure area. He'd been waiting for an hour, but it felt like days, and he finally saw Lyra walking toward him, accompanied by two official-looking humans in suits. He felt like he could breathe again for the first time in weeks. She looked different somehow, more confident, more polished. Her clothes were more formal than the simple outfits she'd worn in his apartment. But when their eyes met across the crowded terminal, her face lit up with the same joy he remembered, and her glow became so bright that several nearby travelers stopped to stare. "Jake," she said. Breaking away from her escorts to rush toward him, he caught her in a hug that lifted her off the ground. Not caring about the cameras he could see flashing around them. Being apart from her had felt like living in black and white. Having her back was like the world returning to full color. "I missed you so much," he whispered in her ear. "I missed you too, every single day." The government officials who'd accompanied Lyra introduced themselves as coordinators for the new cultural exchange program. They explained that Lyra would be working as a liaison between humans and Luminari, helping both species understand each other better. "She'll be based here in Portland," one of them said. "We understand you two have a unique relationship that's been beneficial for early integration efforts." Jake wasn't sure if that was official approval or just tolerance, but he'd take it either way. Over the next few weeks, Jake watched Lyra transform into something he'd never expected. A public figure. She appeared on talk shows, spoke at universities, and helped establish the first official human Luminari community center in downtown Portland. "It's incredible," she told him one evening as they sat in his apartment, finally alone after another busy day. "Humans are so eager to learn. They ask questions about everything, from our technology to our art to our family structures. They treating you okay? No one's being hostile?" "A few people are still suspicious, but most are just curious." "Your species has an amazing capacity for acceptance when you're not afraid." Jake smiled. "Our species, huh? I thought you might start thinking of yourself as part human after all this time here." Lyra's light patterns shifted to colors that meant thoughtfulness. "In some ways, I do feel like I belong to both worlds now. But Jake, there's something we need to talk about." His stomach tightened. "That sounds serious." "Yes." "The integration program is going well, but there are still no legal frameworks for relationships like ours. Humans and Luminari can't officially marry, can't share legal benefits, can't even be recognized as family in medical emergencies." Jake had been thinking about this too. "So what do? We become pioneers." Again, she pulled out a tablet and showed him official documents. "The UN is working with both our governments to establish new legal categories for interspecies partnerships. They want to use our relationship as a test case." "What does that mean exactly?" "It means we'd be the first officially recognized human-alien couple in history. But it also means lots of publicity, lots of scrutiny, and lots of pressure to represent both our species well." Jake looked at the documents, then at Lyra's hopeful but nervous expression. "Are you asking me to marry you?" She laughed, a sound that made her whole body shimmer with golden light. "I'm asking if you want to help make history with me. Will there be a ceremony? The biggest, most complicated ceremony ever planned. Human traditions, Luminari traditions, media coverage, diplomatic representatives from multiple worlds, ... double quotes." Jake groaned. "That sounds terrifying. Completely terrifying," Lyra agreed. "But also kind of amazing." The engagement announcement made international news. Jake found himself thrust into a spotlight he'd never wanted, doing interviews and photo shoots, answering questions about what it was like to fall in love with someone from another planet. "The weird thing is," he told his sister Katie during one of their phone calls, "I don't think of her as an alien anymore. She's just Lyra, the person I want to share my life with." "That's exactly how it should be," Katie replied. "Though I have to admit, having an alien sister-in-law is pretty cool." Planning the ceremony was like trying to organize 3 different weddings at once. Human customs, Luminari rituals, and diplomatic protocols all had to be balanced perfectly. "My culture," Lyra explained to the wedding planner. "The ceremony takes place at sunset, so both families can share their light with the bonded pair. But it has to be outside under an open sky. And in human tradition, the couple exchanges rings as symbols of their commitment," the planner added, frantically taking notes. Jake just wanted to marry Lyra and get on with their life together, but he understood that this was bigger than just the two of them. They were showing both species that love could bridge any gap, even the space between worlds. 3 months later, they stood in a beautiful park overlooking the Columbia River as the sun began to set. Jake wore a simple black suit, while Lyra wore traditional Luminari ceremonial robes that seemed to be made of captured starlight. The ceremony itself was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. They exchanged rings while Lyra's family, who had traveled from their homeworld for the occasion, created intricate light patterns that told the story of their love. Human and Luminari guests sat together, many of them forming friendships that would last for years. When the officiant pronounced, "Them bonded in the eyes of both worlds," Lyra's glow became so brilliant that it was visible even in the fading daylight. The light spread to her family members, then to the Luminari guests, and finally seemed to embrace everyone present in a warm, golden radiance. Now that, Jake whispered to his new wife, was worth all the planning stress. Their honeymoon was spent not on some exotic vacation, but working together to open the first community integration center. Jake used his technical skills to develop communication software that helped humans and Luminar understand each other better. While Lyra taught classes in cultural exchange and emotional expression, "Look at this!" Lyra said one evening, showing Jake a tablet full of messages. Couples from both our species are asking for advice about interspecies relationships. We're getting thank you notes from families who have become friends across species lines. Jake read over her shoulder, amazed at the impact their simple decision to help each other was having on two entire worlds. 6 months after their bonding ceremony, they received news that changed everything again. Lyra was pregnant. Is that even possible? Jake asked, staring at the test results from the specialized medical team that had been monitoring their relationship. Apparently so, Dr. Chen said with a smile. The genetics are incredibly complex, but your child will be something completely new, part human, part Luminari, and entirely unique. That night, as they sat on their balcony looking up at the stars, Jake marveled at how much his life had changed since that night he'd found a glowing woman in an alley. Are you scared? Lyra asked, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. Terrified, Jake admitted, but also excited. Our kid is going to grow up in a world where humans and aliens work together, where differences are celebrated instead of feared. They'll never know a world where love was limited by species or planets or the color of someone's skin, as if responding. To their conversation, Lyra's glow pulsed gently, and Jake could swear he saw an answering flicker from her abdomen. I think they're listening, he said softly. Good, then they'll know from the very beginning that they're loved by two worlds. 2 years later, Jake stood in their backyard watching their daughter Luna play with a group of human and Luminari children. At 18 months old, she could already create simple light patterns like her mother. But she also had her father's curiosity about how things worked. The Community Integration Center had expanded into a full campus with schools, medical facilities, and research labs. Jake and Lyra's story had inspired thousands of interspecies friendships and dozens of mixed couples. Remember when you thought your biggest problem was running out of coffee? Lyra said, joining him on their back porch. Jake laughed, pulling her close. Now my biggest problem is figuring out how to child-proof a house when your kid can glow in the dark and float toys with her mind. She gets the floating from my side of the family. Great, I'll add that to the list of things no parenting book prepared me for. As the sun set behind them, their daughter looked up and waved, her small hand creating tiny sparkles in the air. Around them, the sounds of two species learning to live together in harmony filled the evening air Jake had offered. Shelter to a stranger in need, never imagining it would lead to love, marriage, parenthood, and helping to unite two worlds. But as he watched Luna play with her diverse group of friends, he realized that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change the entire universe. No regrets? Lyra asked, reading his thoughts as she always could. Only one, Jake said. It's that I should have bought more coffee that night. We're going to need all the energy we can get. Lyra's laughter lit up the entire yard, and their daughter giggled in response, creating her own symphony of light and joy that seemed to promise an even brighter future for everyone.